Dear Santa, please send me a dad. Her letter to Santa ended up on the desk of a lonely mafia boss. Winter wrapped the city in its sharpest cold. Winds sliced through narrow streets, carrying not just snow, but the edge of danger, the kind that settled in the chest and never left. It was the kind of cold that made people walk faster, heads down, eyes averted. 5-year-old Nina Fuller pulled her scarf tighter, breath fogging the thick fabric as she coughed. A small, fragile sound swallowed by the noise of the street. Her small hand gripped her mother's tightly, fingers laced like a lifeline. Elisa Fuller walked briskly. 28, slim, pale, her dark hair pulled back in a severe, practical bun. Her coat was too thin for the temperature, but she never complained. She worked 2 jobs, cleaning offices at night and stocking shelves at a discount grocery on weekends. Whatever money she earned went toward rent, food, and Nina's respiratory medication. But more than that, it went toward invisibility, toward staying off the radar of the men who controlled these streets. Their apartment sat on the 5th floor of a rundown building on the edge of the bad part of town. 1 room, 1 bed, a space heater that flickered and died on the coldest nights. The building smelled of damp concrete and old cigarette smoke. Nights were cold and tense, silent except for Nina's soft cough and the distant wail of sirens below. Every Saturday afternoon, before Elisa's evening shift, she stopped outside a small family diner near the transit station and let Nina sit on the bench by the window. Inside, children laughed, faces sticky with syrup, while their fathers lifted them onto their shoulders or wiped chocolate from their chins. Mothers smiled without looking over their shoulders. Families sat together, safe, unbothered, unafraid. Nina never asked to go in. She just watched, her small palms pressed to the cold glass, eyes wide, breath shallow, and wheezing softly. She never said a word, but Elisa saw her daughter's reflection in the window, saw the way Nina's gaze lingered not on the food, but on the fathers, the protectors, the ones who made their families feel safe. And it made Elisa's chest tighten with an ache she couldn't name. That night, back home, Nina couldn't stop thinking about the way her mother's smiles always faded too quickly, how she flinched at footsteps in the hallway, how her hands shook when she counted the rent money. Her mother wasn't old, but her eyes looked older than anyone Nina had ever seen. While Elisa heated canned soup on the hot plate, Nina curled under a thin blanket, coughing softly. When her mother turned away, Nina reached for a piece of lined paper from her school notebook, grabbed a dull crayon, and began to write in careful, crooked letters. Dear Santa, please send me a dad. Not for me. For Mommy too. I think she's scared. To keep us safe. Love, Nina Fuller. Mommy, Elisa. Beneath the words, she drew a picture. A tall man in a dark coat. A smiling woman with a bun. A curly-haired girl in the middle. They were all holding hands. They were all safe. She folded the letter carefully, tucked it into her backpack, and waited. 2 days later, on the walk home from school, Nina saw it. A tall, black donation box outside a sleek hotel with golden doors and men in long coats standing outside. It looked official, important, the kind of place where wishes might actually get heard. She slipped the letter inside, her small fingers letting go of the folded paper, and walked away. Most people will scroll past this in 3 seconds. But if you actually care what happens when a ruthless mafia boss opens a letter from a 5-year-old asking for protection, don't let the algorithm bury this story. Subscribe now, or you'll never know if Nina gets her wish, or if it destroys them all. 43 floors above the city, Tyson Cook stood at the window of his corner office, hands clasped behind his back. The glass was bulletproof, tinted just enough to keep the world at a distance. Below, the streets moved like veins, cars, people, all of it under his control. He didn't need to see it to know it was there. His office was silent. No clutter. No personal photos. Just clean lines, dark wood, and the faint smell of expensive leather. The desk held 3 things: a laptop, a phone, and a single file folder. He lived in order. Order meant control. Control meant survival. The door opened. His assistant, Andre, stepped in quietly, holding a stack of envelopes. Daily reports. Intelligence from the docks. Updates on payments. Tyson didn't look up. Anything urgent? He asked. No, sir. Just the usual. Andre set the stack down and hesitated. There was one odd delivery. Came through the donation box at the Crescent Hotel. Got routed here by mistake. Tyson's gaze didn't shift. Trash it. Yes, sir. But Andre left it on the desk anyway. A small, folded piece of notebook paper with uneven creases. It didn't belong. Tyson stared at it for a long moment after Andre left. Then, almost against his will, he reached for it. The paper was soft, worn from a child's hands. He unfolded it slowly. Dear Santa, please send me a dad. Not for me. For Mommy too. I think she's scared. To keep us safe. Love, Nina Fuller. Mommy, Elisa. Beneath the words was a crayon drawing. 3 stick figures. A tall man. A woman. A little girl in the middle. All holding hands. Tyson's jaw tightened. He opened his laptop and typed the name into the database. Nina Fuller. Address flagged. Red marker. His system tracked everything. Every building, every business, every person his crew touched. The Fullers lived in a rent-controlled building on 10th. His men collected there every month. Protection fees. Standard operation. The mother was listed as a cleaner. Single income. Vulnerable. His chest felt tight. He stared at the drawing again. The little girl's hands reaching up to the man on one side, the mother on the other. Safe. For a moment, he wasn't in his office anymore. He was 12 years old, standing in a cramped kitchen that smelled like old coffee and fear. His mother's voice, shaking. Stay in your room, Ty. Don't come out. He'd listened. He'd stayed. And when he finally came out, she was gone. Taken. Used as leverage against his father. Dead before morning. He hadn't been strong enough to protect her then. But now, Tyson folded the letter carefully and placed it in the top drawer of his desk. His hand hovered over the phone. Then he pressed the intercom. Andre, I want eyes on the Fullers. 5th floor, building on 10th. Full surveillance. And pull the collection records. I want to know every dollar we've taken from that address. Yes, sir. Tyson leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled, eyes on the window. The city stretched out before him, cold and indifferent. But somewhere down there, a little girl was scared, and her mother couldn't protect her. Not alone. This time, he could do something. This time, he had the power. Elisa Fuller moved like a ghost. Head down. Steps quick. She'd learned a long time ago that the best way to survive in this neighborhood was to not be seen. Not really. Just another tired woman in a thin coat. Nothing worth noticing. She left Nina with the neighbor, Mrs. Pack, an older woman who didn't ask questions, and headed to her second shift. The discount grocery on 5th. It didn't pay much, but it was steady. And steady meant rent. Rent meant a roof. A roof meant Nina stayed safe. The alley between her building and the bus stop was narrow and dark. She'd walked it 100 times. But tonight, someone was waiting. Mrs. Fuller. She froze. A man stepped out from the shadows. Early 20s, too much cologne, gold chain visible under his jacket. One of them. The collectors. You're late, he said. I paid. Elisa said, her voice steady even though her hands weren't. I paid last week. On time. Yeah, but the rate went up. Didn't you get the notice? She hadn't. There was never a notice. That wasn't how this worked. I don't have anything extra right now, she said carefully. But I can get it by Friday. He stepped closer. She stepped back. Her shoulders hit the brick wall. Friday's not good enough. His smile didn't reach his eyes. We could work something out though. You and me. Elisa's jaw clenched. Her fear turned sharp, hot. Get away from me. Or what? Her hands were shaking now, but she didn't look away. I said get away. He laughed, reached for her arm. Then his phone buzzed. Once. Twice. He frowned, pulled it out, and his face changed. The color drained. He stepped back fast, hands up like she'd pulled a weapon. My mistake, he said quickly. Wrong person. You're good. Yeah. Forget it. He turned and walked away, almost running. Elisa stood there, chest heaving, trying to understand what just happened. She looked around, but the alley was empty. No one else. Just her and the cold. She didn't know that 43 floors above the city, Tyson Cook was watching her on a screen. The surveillance feed was grainy but clear enough. He saw the man corner her. Saw her shake. Saw her stand her ground anyway. Brave. Terrified. Alone. His hand moved to his phone without thinking. The man he called answered on the first ring. Sir. The Fullers. Tyson's voice was flat, cold, absolute. They're off limits. Effective immediately. Anyone touches them answers to me. Spread the word. Understood. Tyson ended the call and kept watching the screen. Elisa was still standing in the alley, one hand pressed to her chest, trying to calm her breathing. She looked so small, so tired. And for the first time in 15 years, Tyson Cook felt something other than control. He felt responsibility. 3 days later, Elisa noticed the changes. The men who usually lingered outside her building were gone. The landlord, who never answered calls, suddenly sent a maintenance crew to fix the heating. They worked fast, nervous, and didn't ask for a tip. And when she came home from her shift, there was a package on her doorstep. No name, no return address, just a plain box. Inside was a bottle of medication, the expensive kind. The kind Nina's doctor had recommended but insurance wouldn't cover. The kind Elisa couldn't afford. She stared at it for a long time, then locked the door behind her. Nina didn't notice her mother's confusion. She was sitting on the floor with her crayons, drawing. Always drawing lately. The same picture over and over. A tall man in a dark coat. A woman. A little girl between them. "Who's that baby?" Elisa asked gently. "The protector," Nina said simply, adding a smile to the tall man's face. Elisa's throat tightened. The next day, she took Nina with her to run an errand, dropping off paperwork at one of the office buildings she cleaned. It was a legitimate business front, sleek and professional. Elisa didn't know who really owned it. As they walked through the lobby, Nina tugged her hand. "Mama, look." A man stood near the elevators. Tall, perfectly tailored black suit. Dark hair, sharp jaw, and eyes that looked like they could see through walls. He was on his phone, speaking quietly, but when Nina's voice echoed, he glanced over. Their eyes met. Tyson Cook didn't believe in coincidences. He'd arranged to be here, accidentally on purpose. Nina, fearless in the way only children can be, smiled and waved. "Hi, mister." Elisa's hand tightened on her daughter's. "Nina, come on." But Tyson stepped forward, slowly, carefully. His expression softened just slightly. "Hi." Nina held up her drawing, the one she'd been carrying in her coat pocket. "I made this. It's my family. See, that's the protector." Tyson looked at the picture, at the tall man in the center holding the little girl's hand. Something in his chest cracked. "It's beautiful," he said quietly. Elisa pulled Nina back gently. "We need to go." "Of course." Tyson's eyes met Elisa's. She saw something in them she didn't understand. Not danger. Not cruelty. Something else. "Stay safe," he said. Elisa nodded once, confused, and led Nina away. Tyson stood in the lobby long after they were gone, staring at nothing. The protector. He'd been called many things. King. Boss. Monster. But never that. Never something worth drawing. It happened on a Tuesday. Elisa was walking Nina home from school, taking the long route to avoid the usual corners. The streetlights were just starting to flicker on. Cold bit at her cheeks. Nina's hand was warm in hers, small fingers tucked inside her palm. They were halfway down the block when the shouting started. Two men, arguing loud and fast near a parked van. Elisa's instincts kicked in immediately. She pulled Nina close and turned across the street. Then she heard the gunshot. Not close, but close enough. People scattered. Someone screamed. Elisa dropped to her knees, covering Nina with her body, her heart slamming against her ribs. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think, just held her daughter and prayed. Then a car screeched to a stop in front of them. Black. Sleek. The back door flew open. "Get behind the car. Now." Tyson Cook's voice. Sharp. Absolute. Elisa looked up and saw him standing there, one hand on the car door, the other reaching toward her. His eyes weren't cold now. They were fierce. Focused. "Move," he said. She didn't argue. She grabbed Nina and stumbled behind the car, pressing her daughter against the bulletproof metal. Tyson stayed in front of them, his body a wall between them and whatever was happening across the street. It was over in less than a minute. Sirens wailed in the distance. The men ran. The street emptied. Tyson didn't move until the last footstep faded. Then he turned. "Are you hurt?" Elisa shook her head. She was shaking too hard to speak. Nina clung to her neck, silent, terrified. "Get in," Tyson said, opening the door. "I'll take you home." "No." Elisa's voice cracked, but she forced herself to stand. "No. Stay away from us." Tyson went very still. "Your world," Elisa said, her voice breaking. "Your world is too dangerous. Every time you're near us, something bad happens. Just, please, leave us alone." For a moment, he didn't respond. Then he stepped closer, just one step, and his voice dropped low. "My world is what keeps this one safe," he said quietly. "You think those men ran because of the sirens?" They ran because they know whose territory this is. You think your building's been quiet lately by accident. He paused. I'm not the danger, Elisa. I'm the only reason the danger stays away. She stared at him, her breath still uneven, her hands still shaking. You don't have to trust me, he said. But I'm not going anywhere. He got back in his car and drove away. Elisa stood there on the empty sidewalk, holding her daughter, and realized something terrifying. She'd already started to depend on him, and she didn't even know his name. Most people will scroll right past this. But if you actually want to know whether Elisa ever learns the truth about who's been protecting her, or if that protection costs her everything, subscribe now. Because what happens next changes all three of their lives forever. The invitation arrived 3 days later. A single card, heavy paper, expensive, hand-delivered to her door. You are invited to dinner. Saturday, 7 p.m. Carlisle and Company. No one else will be there. No signature. But Elisa knew. She held the card for a long time, staring at the embossed letters. This was a line. A clear, dangerous line. If she went, she was stepping into his world. And his world didn't let people leave. But Nina found the card on the counter, and her eyes went wide. Mama, is it a party? No, baby. It's just dinner. Can we go? Please. Elisa looked at her daughter's hopeful face and felt something break inside her. When was the last time Nina had been excited about anything? When was the last time she'd smiled like that? Okay, Elisa whispered. We'll go. Saturday night, a car picked them up. The restaurant was small, tucked between two buildings she'd walked past 100 times but never noticed. Inside, it was warm, soft lighting, quiet music, and completely empty. Tyson was already there, standing near a table by the window. He wasn't wearing his usual suit, just a dark sweater and slacks. He looked almost normal. Almost. Thank you for coming, he said. Elisa nodded stiffly. Nina, fearless as always, walked right up to him. Hi, mister. Do you own this place? I do, Tyson said. It's really pretty. Something softened in his face. Thank you. The meal was simple. Pasta, bread, nothing flashy. Tyson didn't talk much at first, but Nina filled the silence with endless questions. What's your favorite color? Do you have a dog? Do you like dinosaurs? And slowly, impossibly, Tyson started to answer. His voice lost its edge. His shoulders relaxed. Then Nina said something about a cartoon she'd watched, and Tyson smiled. Not a polite smile. A real one. Elisa stared. I had a mother, Tyson said suddenly, his eyes on his plate. She worked 2 jobs, just like you. Try to keep me safe. But the world we lived in, he stopped. I wasn't strong enough to protect her. I was just a kid. And when they came for her, I couldn't do anything. Elisa's throat tightened. I spent my whole life making sure I'd never be that weak again, he continued. That I'd never have to stand by and watch someone he paused. That I'd never be powerless again. He looked up at her then, and she saw it. The guilt, the shame, the weight he'd been carrying for years. I don't want anything from you, he said quietly. I just want to make sure no one ever hurts you the way they hurt her. Elisa's hands were shaking again. But this time, it wasn't fear. It was something else entirely. Damon heard about the Fullers a week later. He was a competitor. Smaller operation, hungry for territory. And when one of his guys mentioned that Tyson Cook had been seen with some woman and her kid, Damon smiled. Tyson Cook didn't have weaknesses. Everyone knew that. But this was different. He made a call, did some digging, found out Elisa was looking for better work, something with benefits, something stable. So he made her an offer. The message came through a friend of a friend. A cleaning company, legitimate, looking for a floor manager. Good pay, health insurance. Interview scheduled for Monday at their warehouse on the docks. Elisa's hands shook when she read it. It was too good to be true. But Nina needed a real doctor. Not just a free clinic. A real one. So she went. She brought Nina because Mrs. Pack was sick and there was no one else to watch her. The warehouse was on the east side, near the water. Quiet. Too quiet. Elisa's stomach twisted the moment she stepped inside. No lights. No people. Just shadows and the smell of rust. Hello, she called. The door slammed shut behind her. Men stepped out from the dark. 4 of them. And in the center, a man in an expensive coat, smiling like a wolf. Mrs. Fuller, Damon said. Thanks for coming. Elisa's heart stopped. She pushed Nina behind her. What do you want? Just a message. For a mutual friend. Elisa's hand slipped into her coat pocket. The phone. The one Tyson had given her 2 weeks ago. She'd almost thrown it away a dozen times. But something stopped her. She pressed the button blind, praying it would connect. "Please," she whispered, her voice shaking. "Don't hurt her." Damon stepped closer, and Elisa, her whole body trembling, whispered into the phone hidden in her pocket. "They have Nina." 43 floors above the city, Tyson's phone buzzed. He answered it without looking. Then he heard her voice. Scared. Broken. "They have Nina." Everything stopped. His hand tightened on the phone. His other hand was already reaching for his coat. "I'm on my way," he said. His voice was calm. Flat. Lethal. Andre looked up from his desk, saw Tyson's face, and went pale. "Get everyone," Tyson said. "Now." Tyson's car hit the docks going 90. He didn't slow down until he saw the warehouse. Dark. Isolated. One light flickering in a broken window. He got out and walked toward the door. Alone. Andre had tried to follow. Tyson told him to stay back. This wasn't about numbers. This was personal. The door was unlocked. He pushed it open. Inside, Damon stood in the center of the space, flanked by 4 men. And behind them, pressed against the far wall, Elisa held Nina tight against her chest. Tyson's eyes met Elisa's for half a second. Then he looked at Damon. "Let them go." Damon smiled. "You know how this works, Cook. You took my territory. I take something of yours." "They're not mine," Tyson said quietly. "They're not part of this." "Then why are you here?" Tyson didn't answer. He just took another step forward. "Stay back," Damon warned. One of his men raised a gun. Tyson moved. It happened fast. Brutal. Efficient. He closed the distance before the gun could fire, disarmed the man with a sharp crack of bone, and drove his elbow into another's throat. Gunfire exploded. Glass shattered. Tyson felt something hot slice across his ribs, but he didn't stop. Damon pulled his own weapon, but Tyson was already on him. He slammed Damon against a steel beam, the gun clattering to the floor. Damon swung wild. Tyson blocked, then drove his fist into Damon's jaw once, twice, until the man crumpled. Silence. Tyson stood over him, breathing hard, blood running down his side. His knuckles were split, his shirt torn. But he didn't look at Damon. He looked at Elisa. She was still pressed against the wall, Nina's face buried in her neck. She was shaking so hard she could barely stand. Tyson crossed the room slowly. He dropped to one knee in front of them. His hand, covered in blood and soot, reached out. "It's over," he said quietly. Elisa stared at his hand, at the scars, the blood, the proof of what he'd just done. Then she grabbed it. Her fingers wrapped around his, tight and fierce, pulling him closer. Nina's small hand reached out too, grabbing onto his sleeve. And there, in that silent, terrifying warehouse, the 3 of them formed a circle. Not safe, not clean, not a promise of anything except survival. But it was a beginning, forged in blood, in terror, in absolute, desperate trust. Tyson's other hand came up, covering both of theirs. "I've got you," he whispered. "I've got you both." Elisa's breath hitched. She didn't let go. Neither did he. The safe house was 40 minutes outside the city. High walls, private security, cameras on every corner. Elisa didn't ask questions. She just followed Tyson inside, carrying Nina, who'd finally fallen asleep in the car. The place was beautiful, clean, warm, everything her apartment wasn't. Tyson showed her to a bedroom on the 2nd floor. Soft bed, thick curtains, a bathroom with water that actually ran hot. "Stay as long as you need," he said. "I can't pay you back for this. I'm not asking you to." Elisa looked at him, really looked at him. His shirt was bandaged under his jacket. His knuckles were still bruised. He looked exhausted. "Why?" she asked. "Why are you doing this?" Tyson was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Because I can." It wasn't the whole truth, but it was enough. 3 days later, Tyson came back. He found Elisa in the kitchen, Nina coloring at the table. "I have a proposition," he said. Elisa tensed. "What kind?" "A job. I'm restructuring my legitimate businesses. Real estate, security consulting, import logistics. All legal, all clean." He paused. "I need someone to manage the operations. Someone I can trust. Someone who isn't afraid to tell me when my systems are broken." Elisa stared. "You want me to work for you?" "With me," he corrected. "Full benefits. Real salary. Safe environment. I don't know anything about." "You know how to survive," Tyson said quietly. "You know how to protect what matters. That's more valuable than any degree." Elisa looked at Nina, who was drawing another picture. The three stick figures, still holding hands. Okay, she whispered. I'll do it. Tyson nodded once. Good. A week later, Elisa walked into the office for the first time. Professional, confident, a little scared, but ready. That evening, she came home to the safe house and found Tyson on the floor with Nina. They were building a tower out of blocks. Nina was giggling. Tyson was smiling. Not the cold, controlled smile. A real one. Higher. Nina squealed. It's going to fall, Tyson warned, carefully placing another block. It collapsed. Nina laughed so hard she fell over. Tyson caught her, steadying her with gentle hands. Elisa stood in the doorway, watching. Her chest felt tight. Nina looked up. Mama, is this what a family is? Elisa's throat closed. She looked at Tyson. He was watching her, something uncertain in his eyes. She smiled. Yes, baby, she said softly. That's exactly what a family means. Chapter 9. 1 year later, the city looked the same. Cold, dangerous, unforgiving. But Tyson Cook had changed. He still controlled the territory, still commanded respect, but his empire had shifted. Less blood, more influence. He'd funneled his resources into legitimate businesses, construction, security, real estate development. He used his power to protect the neighborhoods he once exploited. People noticed. Quietly, carefully, and beside him, managing the operations with sharp efficiency and unwavering integrity, was Elisa Fuller. She stood on the stage of the Carlisle Grand Hall, addressing a room full of investors and city officials. The launch event for Tyson's newest venture, a community development fund. True strength, Elisa said, her voice steady, isn't refusing help. It's knowing when to let someone stand beside you, when to let them be your shield, so you can be theirs. The room applauded. Tyson watched from the side, hands in his pockets, something like pride in his eyes. Afterward, they walked home together. The safe house had become home. Really home. Nina was already there with the nanny, probably asleep by now. Their steps fell in sync, the way they always did now. Comfortable. Easy. Can I ask you something? Elisa said. Always. If someday I'm not scared anymore. She paused. If I don't need your protection, would you still stay? Tyson stopped walking. He turned to face her, and his hand reached for hers. His scarred, calloused fingers threading through her steady, strong ones. I'd stay, he said quietly. Not because you need me, but because I need you. Need me for what? To keep this world quiet, he said. To remind me what I'm protecting. To make sure I don't become the thing I spent my life fighting. Elisa's eyes burned. She squeezed his hand tighter. Then stay, she whispered. Always, he said. Their hands remained clasped as they walked the rest of the way home. The city stretched around them, cold and dangerous as ever. But they were safe. Not because the world had changed. Because they had. Together. If you watched this far but didn't subscribe, ask yourself why. You just heard a complete story about a mafia boss who found redemption through a child's letter. And you're really going to let the algorithm decide you never see stories like this again? Hit subscribe. You know you want to.